A very good evening to all my dear students. Welcome to today's session for auditing and assurance subject. So how are you all? I can see many of you have already joined. So Mitesh Bhai, Ustad, Hira, Shivangini, Ramachandra, Bhumika, Shazia. A very good evening to all dear students. So students, I hope that you all are taking full advantage of these classes organized by the Board of Studies of ICAI, and you all are enjoying these sessions. So in auditing so far, auditing and assurance subject so far, you have covered two chapters, chapter number 1 and chapter number 2, right? So I hope the various concepts like the meaning of term audit, then scope and objective of audit, then various inherent limitations of audit, SA 210, SA 220, something about SQC1 that you all have covered in chapter number 1 is clear to you. So please send in your replies. Students, keep on sending your replies, your queries so as to make this session as interactive as possible. So I can see Sudhanshu, Tushar, Shivraj, Rajiv Kumar, Suraj, Krishna, Mohit, Ketan, Kanchan, Sundar, Jia. And if we talk about chapter number 2, then various concepts relating to planning and audit, right? Then audit program, SA 300, SA 315, a little bit about SA 315 and 330, and then SA 320 about planning, about materiality in planning and performing an audit. So I hope all those classes are clear, crystal clear to all of you. So Shazia is saying, ma'am, yes, all clear. Bhumika is also saying, Ketan is also saying that both chapters are clear. Ramachandra is also saying the same. Chalo, theek hai. So with a very positive note, we'll be starting with the chapter which is meant to be studied today, which is chapter number 3, audit documentation and audit evidence. Student, this is a quite a lengthy chapter consisting of 9 essays, right? And this chapter is a foundation, like as your chapter number 1 and 2 contain what? The basics, the foundation of the entire auditing and assurance subject. Same way, this chapter, chapter number 3 is also very important. This is going to form your foundation for the further chapters that you will be studying in this, in the syllabus for auditing and assurance subject. Okay? So quite lengthy chapter, 9 essays, but believe me, very easy. And it will be my endeavor to make each and every line in your module crystal clear to all of you. Okay? So before starting the session for today, again a very humble request, keep on posting your queries. Try to make this session as interactive as possible, right? If your query relates to the topic that we are studying, I'll take that query then and there only. And if it relates to some other topic, maybe any topic which we will be covering, then I'll take it later on, right? So now my first question to all of you, tell me, what do you understand by the term documentation? Documentation. So tell me, and again keep on sending your replies. So I'm waiting for your replies. Documentation term. Documentation. So first of all, now we'll be studying as to why we are studying this chapter in so detail. So I can see a number of replies have come, which is really very appreciable. So Kiran is saying writing down. Bhumika is saying arranging or filling documents. Tushar says proof of event or transaction. Ramachandra is saying recording of key matters. Ayush is saying to write it somewhere. Then Shivraj, Jivathi, Rajiv Kumar, Ustad, Himanshu, Kanchan, Sundar, Diksha. So a number of the students have replied correctly. Okay? Now I'll take you to the term documentation. First tell me, see in your chapter number 1 and chapter number 2, Hana, you have studied about various concepts with respect to auditing. Okay? How audit starts. Hana? You have got an idea as to what is to be done in when an auditor is conducting an audit, right? Now tell me, when the auditor is planning an audit work, when he is doing his working, when he is doing his audit work, when he is doing certain when he is drawing certain conclusions, or let's say when the auditor is calculating materiality, tell me, is there a need to record it? Is there a need to record it? Quickly send in your replies. Abhi, we are not going to the module. We are just trying to understand in a very layman language. Is there a need to record all these things? Whatever you have got the knowledge about the term audit, whatever auditor is doing, is there a need to record it? Yes or no? Quick answers. So Ketan, Tushar, Subhashri, Love, Himanshu, Shajda, they are saying yes, there is a need to record. So you will see there is a definition given by essay 230. There is a definition given by essay 230 with respect to audit documentation, which says that it is a record of various audit procedures the auditor performed, the audit evidence obtained, and the conclusions the auditor reached. Okay? Abhi, we are not going to the module. Abhi just we are trying to understand as to why we are studying this chapter, audit documentation and audit evidence. तो अभी आप सबने क्या कहा कि whatever auditor will be doing, he will have to maintain a record. है ना? This record, tell me what are the benefits. आपने कहा yes, there is a need to record. Now tell me what are the benefits if an auditor or the audit team maintains a record of everything, whatever they perform during the course of audit. Quick benefits. So Shivangi is saying, yes ma'am, it helps the auditor. Now tell me, Siddhi, now reply, I might get your answer. Tell me, what are the benefits if a record is maintained by the auditor? Quickly tell me. A quick and a very general discussion. Then we'll start with what is given in the relevant essays. So, Ketan is saying it serves as evidence. Ayush is saying it helps in future audit. Then clarity of audit work. Then Palak is saying less chances of errors, safeguard on alleging negligence in future. Himanshu is saying, which is absolutely correct. Okay? So maintaining a record of whatever the auditor is doing is so very important that there is a separate essay which deals with the auditor's responsibility with respect to maintaining documentation throughout the audit of financial statement. And audit documentation is so important that there is a separate essay. That is why we are studying it in detail, right? Same way, now tell me, when the auditor is giving an opinion, just a minute. See, what is the ultimate purpose of conducting an audit? To express an opinion thereon. Remember, you all have done the definition of term audit in your chapter number 1. Now, I'm coming to the second concept of audit evidence, the name of this chapter. So audit documentation अभी बड़ी ही layman language में you have understood कि audit documentation हम क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं, because ये बहुत important है when the auditor is conducting an audit, and that is why there is a separate essay 230, right? Now when the auditor is giving an opinion, it should be based on certain proofs. Why? See, when you are giving an expert opinion, that let's say ABC Limited is our client, and we are saying that the financial statement reflect a true and fair view. Or let's say with respect to XYZ Limited, the auditor, or we are saying, we are the auditors, that it do not reflect true and fair view. So it should be based on certain proofs. Yes or no? Quickly send in a replies. Expert opinion दे रहे हैं ना. So tell me whether such opinion, which is an expert opinion, we are giving with reference to the financial statement of a company, should they be based on certain proof? So you are saying yes. So these proofs are nothing but what? Audit evidence. We cannot give any opinion whether we want to say their financial statement reflected true and fair view, or we want to say, we as auditor, we want to say that financial statement do not reflect a true and fair view unless and until it is based on certain proofs, it is based on certain evidence. So obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence is so very important that there is a separate essay, SA 500, and the name of the essay is what? Audit evidence. And that is why we'll be studying this SA 500 in this chapter in detail. Okay? So I hope now you are able to understand as to why we are studying a topic in detail, which is what? Audit documentation and audit evidence. So audit documentation, it is where it is given in SA 230, and audit evidence is SA 500, and students apart from these two essays will be covering 7 other essays which I have listed out here. So I've just given you a brief. So I told you this is what? Audit documentation. I hope the word file is visible to all of you. Okay. So Ms. Varsha is saying that audit evidence is required to support the auditor's opinion, which is absolutely correct. Okay. And essay 500, which is what your audit evidence. Rest of the 7 essays will be covering up as in when the we'll be taking up the further sessions. ठीक है. तो अभी हमने मॉड्यूल से कुछ नहीं किया, बस क्या समझा है कि ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन और ऑडिट एविडेंस को क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं हम इतना डिटेल में. ठीक है. सो अ क्विक रिप्लाई फ्रॉम ऑल ऑफ यू, वेदर जो भी अभी तक हमने पढ़ा है, वेदर इट इज क्लियर और नॉट. पढ़ा नहीं है, कुछ समझा है, कुछ डिस्कशन किया है, वेदर इट इज क्लियर और नॉट. ठीक है. नाउ माय नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, what do you understand by the term audit? So let us now try to understand the term audit documentation first. So first I'll be covering up audit documentation and then we'll be taking up audit evidence. ठीक है. So audit क्या होता है, ये आपने chapter number 1 में डिटेल में पढ़ा है. तो अभी just we will have a look at the definition that you have done in chapter number 1, assuming that the concept of audit is clear to all of you. ठीक है. So audit is an independent examination of financial information of any entity, whether profit oriented or not, irrespective of its size and legal form, where such an examination is conducted with a view to expressing an opinion thereon. ठीक है. तो audit क्या होता है ये आप सबको पता है. ठीक है. Now let us try to understand the second term, documentation, and how it is defined in essay 230. So documentation ka, if you look at the dictionary meaning, so the things that I have written in red now, so these are basically the dictionary meanings, or matlab you need not as such learn them. ठीक है. So documentation is material that provides official information. material that provides official information. ठीक है. Now if we combine these two words, audit and documentation, so I can say material that provides official information with respect to audit of the financial statement of a company. ठीक है. Now tell me what comes to your mind. Documentation किस किस चीज का रखना है? What all the auditor should document when he's conducting the audit of the financial statements of the company? Quick answers I want. So many of you have given the correct definition of term audit, which is absolutely correct, and this shows that your understanding of the term audit and chapter 1 and 2 is absolutely good understanding you all have. So now tell me, what in your understanding the auditor should document when he's conducting the audit of the financial statements of a company? So Aditya is saying ma'am audit plan, Himanshu is saying plan, procedures, program, overall strategy, Hari is saying arranging in files, Bhumika is saying audit plan and strategy. ठीक है. That's good. The answer is right, but let us see what is given in your essay 230. So students, see, when the auditor is, first of all, we'll try to see an example. Let's say the auditor is conducting the audit of ABC Limited. ठीक है. And he's checking the debtors balance. He's checking the debtors balance. ठीक है. Now, let's say the auditor, he is doing various working in order to check the debtors balance. Let's say, for example, he checks the ledgers. He checks the ledgers of debtors, bank statements, calculations of provision for bad and doubtful debts. ठीक है. Let's say he also sends external confirmation to debtors. What is external confirmation? We'll be doing in this chapter in detail. But as of now, just try to understand that when the auditor is sending a request to any debtor, let's say Mr. X is the debtor of ABC Limited. So our auditor, he'll send a confirmation request to Mr. X stating that Mr. X, we are the auditor of ABC Limited. Please tell what is the balance of ABC Limited in your books. है ना. तो externally he is confirming. External to ABC Limited ना, X is a third party. So confirmation from the third party. So let's say the auditor is sending what? The balance confirmation request in order to check the debtor balances. Clear? ठीक है. So अभी what we are understanding? We are trying to understand the definition of term audit documentation given in essay 230. But before that, we are trying to understand it in terms of an example. ठीक है. ठीक है. Now, based on this, all the documents he collect, all the external confirmation, the calculations he performs, recalculation, है ना, the ledgers, the bank statements, he obtains various documents like the calculation sheets, whereby he sees that provision is correctly calculated, right? He obtains the external confirmation replies from the third parties, right? He checks the bank statement in detail, Hana, and he marks as to, okay, in the bank statement, the same amount is coming as is coming in the ledgers. Okay? So these are the proofs that he obtains. Based on these proofs, our auditor, he concludes that the debtor balances is appropriately reflected in the financial statements, right? So what we have seen that the auditor of ABC Limited, he is checking the debtor balances. He is doing certain work, audit work with respect to what debtor balances. So students, here now I'll give it a term, that is he is performing what? Audit procedures. He is performing certain procedures. Now, when he's calculating, he's performing certain procedure. When he's sending an external confirmation, he's performing certain procedure. When he's inspecting the documents, he's performing certain procedures. What are the audit procedures? These procedures also we are going to discuss in this chapter in detail. Very interesting topic, but we'll be taking it up in the next session. Okay? So he's performing certain audit procedures. Why? Because he wants to obtain certain proof with respect to the balance appearing in the debtor, like the debtor balance appearing in the balance sheet. So I can say that he wants to obtain certain audit evidence. Clear? He is obtaining certain audit evidence, and based on this audit evidence, he is drawing certain what? Conclusions. Okay? So I'm writing it as 1, 2 and 3. 1, 2 and 3. Now again, my question to all of you, tell me, the auditor should maintain a record of only 1 or 1, 2 and 3? Only 3? Tell me. So the option that I've given you, only 1, the audit procedures he performed. Only 3, that is the conclusions he draw. All 1, 2 and 3. Quickly send in your replies. So Ritika and Mohit are very fast in answering, which is absolutely correct. All 3. Diksha, Ustad, Himanshu, Jay, Ramachandra, Subhashri, Kanchan, absolutely correct. All 3. So what we have seen कि जो भी audit procedure किया, जो भी audit evidence obtain किया और जो भी conclusion draw किया during the conduct of audit, उस सब का record auditor को maintain करना है, right? And this is what is contained in the definition of audit documentation given by SA 230. ठीक है? So let me just take you through the module first. See, SA 230 on audit documentation. It deals with the auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statement. What is it saying? That for an audit of financial statement. अब जब auditor, when he'll be conducting an audit of financial statement, the audit will include what? Performing the audit procedures, obtaining the audit evidence, and drawing conclusions also. So let us have a look at the definition. Audit documentation refers to the record of audit procedures performed, है ना? External confirmation send किया, कुछ calculations किया, inspect किए कुछ documents, है ना? Relevant audit evidence obtained. आपको external confirmation के replies मिले, आपको calculation से आपने और कुछ rough calculations हुए, कुछ final calculations हुए, then you obtained evidence that जो provisions हैं that are correct, है ना? Then you obtained bank statement, right? And the conclusions the auditor reached, that debtor balances is appropriately reflected in the financial statements. Okay? So let us just read this definition and just keep in mind the example of debtor balances that we have just discussed. So audit documentation refers to the record of audit procedures performed. Relevant audit evidence obtained. Relevant. The term relevant here is very relevant, है ना? आपने rough calculations भी किया, आपने final calculations भी किया, है ना? This we will see later on, that what all are included in audit documentation and what is not included. And the conclusions auditor reached. And when I was telling you कि auditor will start his work, है ना? तो ये सब auditor का work है ना? So these are called what? Working papers or work papers of the auditor. And where is this definition given? This definition is given in SA 230. ठीक है. Quickly send in your replies. अभी तक we have just done the definition of term audit documentation, and I hope you are able to understand and you are able to learn this definition also. And how will that be possible? If you just listen to the examples that we are discussing, and when you are writing this definition, just keep in mind the examples कि पहले audit procedures perform किए थे, फिर audit evidence obtain किया था, and then the auditor reached at a conclusion. So audit documentation is a record of all three. ठीक है. Now students, tell me, when you were doing essay 320, है ना, in chapter number 2, just a minute. In your chapter number 2, you must have seen when you have done essay 320 about materiality, है ना, that the auditor needs to maintain documentation with respect to materiality. Remember performance materiality. Remember revision if any. Remember. So, and as in when we'll be covering various other essays, you will see that in these essays, there are specific requirement, there is specific responsibility on the auditor to maintain a documentation with respect to the part of audit that particular essay is dealing. For example, essay 320 is about what? Materiality in planning and performing an audit. So there is a paragraph which says that auditor has to maintain a documentation with respect to materiality, performance materiality, the revision if any, right? But there is a separate exclusive essay with respect to documentation which says what we have seen, that essay 230 says that it deals with the auditor's responsibility. See, I'll take you through the module again. To prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. Okay. So now keep in mind this essay 320 example and now read this line with me. The specific documentation requirements of other essays, example essay 320 and the other essays also that we'll be doing, do not limit the application of this essay. मतलब आपको throughout the conduct of audit of financial statement, the auditor will have to maintain audit documentation. दो ऐसे 320 का क्या था कि materiality के लिए documentation करो. So it does not mean कि only materiality के लिए ही documentation होगा, right? Throughout the conduct of audit, the auditor has to maintain the documentation. Laws or regulation may establish additional documentation requirements. The Companies Act or any other law or regulation, it may have the additional record of audit procedures performed, the relevant audit evidence obtained, and the conclusions auditor reached. Okay? I hope this is clear, and I'm repeating it again that this is a foundation for what you will be studying in the further chapters to come. So a very important chapter. Okay? Now, as every essay, as every essay contains certain responsibilities for an auditor, certain objective of the auditor when he is applying that essay, let us now understand the objective of the auditor in terms of essay 230. Documentation maintain करना है. What is the objective? So the objective of the auditor is to prepare documentation that provides a sufficient and appropriate record of the basis of auditor's report. Okay? See, auditor is giving a report, or let me just, auditor is giving a report, or I can say he is giving an opinion. Okay? Such an opinion is based on various conclusions. All these conclusions are based on evidence, and the evidence are obtained based on audit procedures. And you have seen that a record of all this is what? Audit documentation. So, audit documentation provides a basis for the report of the auditor, the opinion of the auditor. I hope clear hai. Okay. Now, I hope this point is clear. that audit documentation provide a basis for the report, the opinion of the auditor. ठीक है? Now, just answer one of my questions that if I ask you, you were the auditor of ABC Limited, ठीक है? And I ask you after 1 year, you have completed the audit. I ask you after 1 year that listen, Mr. Auditor, have you conducted like when you conducted the audit of ABC Limited, let's say in the financial year 2021, are you sure that such audit was conducted in accordance with essays or in accordance with the requirements of Companies Act? So tell me, will this audit documentation help you in proving that yes, that audit was conducted in accordance with the essays and legal and regulatory requirements? So the answer to this question is absolutely yes. You can always show the documentation that see, these were the audit procedures we performed, these were the evidence we obtained, and these were the conclusions we reached. And it shows that audit was performed in accordance with the essays and relevant legal and regulatory requirements. So can I say that the second objective is that such audit documentation provides the evidence that audit was planned and performed in accordance with essays and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. So many of you are saying, yes, ma'am, it will definitely help. So these are the two objectives when the auditor is preparing the audit documentation, that it provides the basis for the report, the opinion of the auditor, and it acts as an evidence that the audit was conducted in accordance with essays and legal and regulatory requirements, right? Now, if I ask you, what is the nature of audit documentation? So just relate this topic to objective of auditor. So audit documentation has the nature of providing evidence, that evidence about what? The basis of the conclusion. Just a minute. Basis for the conclusion, and that evidence that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with essays and legal and regulatory requirements. So these two topics are connected. So what is the nature of audit documentation? It has the nature of providing evidence. What evidence? That what is the basis of the conclusion, right? And that the other evidence is that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with the essays and the applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Okay, I hope it is clear. Okay, now students, tell me, see, I'm checking your knowledge of chapter number 1 and 2 again and again. In chapter number 2, you have studied the concept of audit program. It forms part of audit documentation, yes or no? Quickly send in your replies. A quick yes or no. Audit program. So अभी हमने क्या पढ़ा था? Whatever audit procedure, like basically just try to understand whatever audit work the auditor is to be documented. Okay. So assertion, Ketan, I'll be taking up later on. Firstly, give answer to this question. Will audit program be a part of my audit documentation? So love, Ram, my next question to you. Tell me, what is the purpose or the benefits if quickly sending your replies. Just try to think as to what will be the benefits. अब समझ documentation क्या है, objective क्या है, ये समझ आ गया. What will be the benefits of maintaining engagement team, है ना, engagement partner. These all terms you all have done in your chapter number 1. So tell me.
So see, if an audit team is maintaining audit document, ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन आपका एक फाइल बन जाएगा, आपको सारे पेपर्स कलेक्ट करने हैं, उसको अरेंज करना है. सो दैट इज गोइंग टू टेक सम टाइम ना. सो नाउ टेल मी, इफ सच टाइम और कॉस्ट is involved, is there any benefit also of maintaining such audit documentation? Benefits of audit documentation, so that we will be doing from the module. So many of you are saying some network issues there, so it will get resolved.
So for all those who are saying video is not clear, I am on page number 3.3, paragraph number 1.4, and we are discussing the topic purpose of audit documentation. ठीक है? See, you all have said that audit program is one of the example of audit documentation. ठीक है? Such audit documentation is going to benefit that engagement team in planning and performing the audit. The program is documented, right? Whatever work has been done so far has been documented. Documented का क्या मतलब है? मैंने बताया ना, आपने एक फाइल बना लिया, be it a hard copy, be it soft copy, be it in pen drive. तो you have all the papers, all the working relating to the audit engagement at one place, right? So this is going to help the auditor in planning and performing the audit. Clear hai? Planning and performing the audit. So IT, many of the students are saying that some network issues are there, so please look into it. So students, concentrate, that network issue will be resolved if there is any. Hana? So this is going to help the audit team in planning and performing the audit. है ना? अगर आपके पास सब कुछ लिखा हुआ है कि अभी तक आपने क्या काम किया, आगे क्या काम करना है ना? So this is going in planning and further performing the audit, right? Further, students, you all have seen in when you have done in chapter number 1, chapter number 2 audit program, that see the person who is going to perform a certain audit procedure is also mentioned, right? So that is going to help the engagement team to see as to who is accountable for the work that has been performed or that is to be performed, right? So first we have seen assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. Then enabling the engagement team to be accountable for its work, because everything is mentioned ना, किसी ने काम किया, initial put किए हैं, अपने signatures किए हैं, या program में mention है, तो everything is clear as to who is accountable for the work that has been performed, right? And when the superiors, the supervisors, they know as to, or the engagement partner, he can see as to, okay, this work has been done by so and so person, this much work has been done, this much work is still left. So it will assist the engagement team to direct and supervise the audit work and to discharge the review responsibility. So these are the benefits arising to the engagement team. What are these? It helps to plan and perform the audit, to direct, supervise and discharge the review responsibilities, and to see as to who is accountable. ठीक है? And one of the student has answered correctly that if a proper audit documentation is maintained, this is going to help in future audit, right? Suppose you are the auditor this year and you are again the auditor of the company in the next year. So the matters of continuing significance, let's say certain related party transactions are there this year. You can always refer to the audit documentation of the last year in order to see as to whether such related party transactions were there in the last year and how the same was dealt. If any provision was calculated, you can always refer to the documentation of the last year as to whether and how such calculation was made. So we were doing benefits of audit documentation or purpose of audit documentation. So we have seen the first three benefits or purpose, that it is going to help the engagement team to plan and perform the audit, to direct, supervise the audit work and discharge the review responsibilities, and to see as to who is accountable for the work performed. Then it helps to retain a record of matters of continuing significance to future audits. And then last 2 points that we are going to discuss is that with respect to review and inspection. So we were discussing that in chapter number 1, you have understood the concept of standard of quality control 1, right? So where there is a responsibility on the firm to establish the policies and procedures in order to maintain the quality of the audit work that has been performed, right? So if a proper audit documentation is been made, this will enable the conduct of quality control review and inspection in accordance with SQC1. So basically internal inspection within the firm, right? And the sixth point says that it helps in conducting the external inspection in accordance with the applicable legal, regulatory and other requirements. So let's say A auditor is there and B auditor has been appointed to check as to whether the quality of the audit work done by auditor A is right or not, right? It is up to the standards which have been prescribed or not. Then it will also help in the external inspection in accordance with the applicable legal, regulatory and other requirements. So many of you are now saying that, ma'am, it is clear now, that now the network is clear. So I hope the purpose of audit documentation, the 6 points that we have discussed is clear. So I'll wait for you, all of you to reply, like many of you to reply. Is the video clear now? Okay. And now tell me, is this topic 1.4 purpose of audit documentation clear, since there was a network issue? So if you want me to repeat it, I'll repeat it. Otherwise, we'll move further. अच्छा, ठीक है, okay. ठीक है. So many of you are saying that, ma'am, now it is clear, but please summarize this topic. ठीक है. So I'll do that. I'll take you through the notes. Just a minute. See, the purpose of audit documentation. ठीक है. So देखो, अगर if everything is documented as to who is going to perform the work, how much work has been performed, how much is left, है ना? So this is going to help the engagement team to plan and perform the audit. ठीक है. Then if everything is mentioned as to how much work is done, how much is still to be done, this is going to help the engagement team in directing, supervising and reviewing the work. So basically I can say that this is going to help the engagement partner in order to supervise as to what has been done, in order to review as to what has been done and direct the engagement team members as to what is now to be done, right? And we have seen that audit program is also a part of audit documentation. So when everything is mentioned कि किसको काम करना है, कब करना है, who has done the work, then it will help the engagement team to see as to who is accountable for the work performed, है ना? If Mr. A is one of the audit team members, who has checked the debtor balances. So you can hold Mr. A accountable for the audit with respect to the debtor balances now, right? Then it acts as a, if certain matters which are of continuing significance. I gave you example of, let's say, related party transaction. For example, you are the auditor of ABC Limited and you were the auditor of ABC Limited last year also. This year you saw that various related party transactions are there. You can always refer to the audit documentation of the last year now, in order to see as to how you dealt with such transactions, whether the transactions are with the same related party as this year also, right? Or let's say any calculation of any accounting estimate, any provision has been made this year. You can always refer to the calculations done in the last year, because why? Because last year also you have maintained the audit documentation. So this helps in retaining a record of matters of continuing significance. Continuing significance is what? The matter which is of significance in the next year audit also. Recurring audit. Hana, you all have done this in your chapter number 1 now. Then these 2 points are relating to review and inspection. So the 5th point, it is basically with respect to the quality control, review and inspection within the firm. Hana? You all have done in chapter number 1, SQC1, that standard on quality control, which says that the firm, the audit firm, they need to establish the policies and procedures in order to ensure that the quality of the work has been maintained. Hana? So in that case, if the firm has to see that whether the quality of the audit work done by, let's say, Mr. A as the engagement partner, whether that is correct or not, the firm can always refer to the audit documentation maintained. Why? Because audit documentation contain a list as to kitna audit procedures kya audit evidence aaya, kya conclusions aaya. In other words, everything, each and everything that the auditor performs during the conduct of audit. And the last point says that in case of any external inspection, like let's say if Mr. A is auditor and his work is been reviewed by another audit firm, so external inspection, so such audit documentation is going to help in that also. Okay? So let us just have a quick look at these points from the module, and then I hope it is clear to all of you. Okay, Bhumika, Suraj, Subhashri, please tell me whether it is clear or not. Siddhi, you also. Himanshu, you also. Tell me whether it is clear. So assisting the engagement team to plan and perform the audit, to direct, supervise and discharge the review responsibilities, to see as to who is accountable for the work performed, retaining a record of for matters of continuing significance to future audit, and enabling the conduct of quality control reviews and inspection in accordance with SQC1. So I told you the inspection within the firm, Hana? Review of quality within the firm, and enabling the conduct of external inspection in accordance with the applicable legal, regulatory and other requirements. See, Himanshu is saying to explain this point with example, planning and performing an audit. So listen students, see, we have seen that audit documentation includes what? Audit program, Hana? Audit program. Okay? And audit documentation will include as to what work has been done, and you can also see as to what is left. Okay? So obviously this is going to plan and perform the audit. Na, jab aapke samne ek list hai that these are the works to be performed on these days, right? And what has already been done. So this is going to help the audit team, the engagement team in planning and performing the audit, right? Is it clear? Whose doubt was it? Himanshu, is it clear? Okay. So just try to understand, take a situation where situation number 1, everything is documented. आपको सब पता है कि कितना काम हो गया, कितना काम रहता है. Vis-a-vis the second situation whereby nothing as such is in record. The audit team is just conducting the audit, no documentation is maintained. So obviously in the first situation, such audit documentation, such record is going to help the audit team, the engagement team in planning and performing the audit. So Himanshu is saying, ma'am, yes, it is clear. Okay, students. So abhi tak we have done the definition of the term audit documentation, the objectives, the nature and the purpose of audit documentation. And this illustration number 1, just go through this illustration as a homework at home. Okay. Now, tell me, can there be a standard form, content and extent of audit documentation? कि ऐसे ही बनाना है audit documentation को? क्या content, extent and form? In what form? What is to be included? Content. The extent कि कितना documentation करना है with respect to a particular item of financial statement. Can there be a fixed, a standard for that? So see, since the documentation will vary from client to client, it depends upon the business the client is into, the size of the business, है ना? So you cannot say that this is a fixed format कि यही आना चाहिए content में, यही extent होना चाहिए. But yes, SA 230 has given a basic guideline that if an auditor is making an audit documentation, it is preparing audit documentation, maintaining a record of audit procedures, the audit evidence and the conclusions. So there is a set guidelines as to what should be contained in that audit documentation, how that audit documentation should be. Okay? So students are saying, ma'am, fixed form, content and extent is not possible because it depends upon size of entity, business of entity. This Ramachandra has replied, which is absolutely correct. Diksha is also saying, ma'am, it depends upon nature and size of business, which is absolutely correct. Himanshu is also saying, ma'am, it cannot be fixed because every business is different. ठीक है? But हाँ, एक broad guideline दिया गया है in SA 230 that this should be the form, content, extent of audit documentation. So before looking at what is given in SA 230, let us again try to understand this with the help of an example. ठीक है? So see what SA 230 says. So first of all, we'll be understanding the example and then we will go through the text given in SA 230. Okay? So let's say A Limited is the client. Okay? And XYZ and associates are the auditor of A Limited. Okay? Is it clear? So what is the topic that we are discussing? Form, content and extent of audit documentation. Okay? So in our example, we have seen that A Limited is the client whereby XYZ and associates are the auditor. Okay? So you all have send the replies कि मैम एक fixed, एक standard form, content, extent तो नहीं हो सकता audit documentation का. Why? Because the nature of, देखो audit documentation क्या होता है? Audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and conclusions the auditor reached. तो ये सब कुछ तो each and every business के लिए vary करेगा ना, है ना? It will vary from client to client ना. तो आप एक standard, एक fixed format तो नहीं कर सकते. But there is a broad criteria. Okay? So what is that? We are going to understand this with the help of this example. Okay? So it says that XYZ and associates, when they are conducting the audit of A Limited, the form, content, extent of audit documentation should be such that, let's take another form, MNO and associates. This is another CA firm. A CA firm who is experienced auditor, though they are not connected with A Limited. So in our example, MNO and associates, They are what? Experienced auditor. इनको audit, they are an audit firm. It is an audit firm. So they are what? Experienced auditor. Though they are not connected with the client A Limited. So this is not connected. ठीक है? So XYZ and associate should maintain audit documentation for audit of A Limited in such a way that an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the client, that is MNO and associate, that should be able to understand the audit procedures performed, the audit evidence obtained and the conclusions. ठीक है, एक बार और समझते हैं. ठीक है, एक बार और समझते हैं. क्या पढ़ा हमने? That in our example, XYZ and associates, the auditor of A Limited, when they are conducting the audit of A Limited, they should, that audit firm XYZ and associates should maintain the audit documentation in such a way, the form, content, extent of audit documentation of the work performed with respect to audit of A Limited should be such that an experienced auditor, जिसको audit का तो knowledge है, though not connected with A Limited, that is example क्या है? MNO and associates, they should be able to understand what are the audit procedures performed, क्या audit evidence थे, क्या conclusions थे. Quickly बताओ, ये समझ आया? Students, I'm waiting for your replies. Ramachandra, you are correct, but see, no two businesses can be same ना. साइज में वैरी करेंगे, वॉल्यूम में वैरी करेंगे, ट्रांजैक्शंस में वैरी करेंगे, कुछ ना कुछ तो डिफरेंस आएगा ना. सो रेस्ट ऑफ द स्टूडेंट्स प्लीज रिप्लाई, है ना. सो नाउ लेट अस हैव अ लुक एट दिस लाइन फ्रॉम द from essay 230. Shazia, no. We are not saying that external party should be able to understand. हमने क्या बोला है कि कोई experienced auditor जिसको audit का knowledge है, experience जिसने audit किया हुआ है, दो वो client से connected ना हो, उसको समझ आना चाहिए ये सब कुछ. ठीक है, ये था normal like in a very layman language. Now let us try to understand. The auditor, तो हमारे एग्जाम्पल में कौन था? XYZ and associates, यही था ना. Let us have a look. XYZ and associates. ठीक है. Shall prepare audit documentation that is sufficient to enable an experienced auditor. यहाँ हमने एग्जाम्पल किसका लिया? MNO and associates. ठीक है. Having no previous connection with the audit. With the audit is what? With this particular client का audit. एक्सपीरियंस्ड ऑडिटर तो है, एक्सपीरियंस तो है ऑडिट का, बट ये वाले क्लाइंट का ऑडिट का एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है. टू अंडरस्टैंड द नेचर, टाइमिंग, एक्सटेंट ऑफ ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स परफॉर्म्ड, द रिजल्ट्स ऑफ द ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स एंड द ऑडिट एविडेंस ऑब्टेन्ड. ठीक है, क्लियर है. एंड significant matters arising during audit and the conclusions reached and the professional judgment applied in reaching those conclusions. तो इफ यू लुक एट दिस, तो बेसिकली क्या बोल रहा है कि जो भी आपका ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन की डेफिनेशन है ना, कि ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स परफॉर्म, ऑडिट एविडेंस ऑब्टेन्ड एंड कंक्लूजन्स द ऑडिटर रीच्ड, ये सब कुछ समझ आना चाहिए किसी को भी. एनी XYZ नहीं, experienced auditor, though not having any previous connection with that particular audit. Clear? Is it clear? ये थर्ड पार्टी नहीं है स्टूडेंट्स. यहाँ पर वर्ड थर्ड पार्टी कहीं है क्या? मैनी ऑफ यू आर सेइंग मैम थर्ड पार्टी को थर्ड पार्टी को थोड़ी ना, अब आप ये थोड़ी ना बोलोगे कि बैंकर्स को समझ आना चाहिए. ठीक है, if any part of that audit work has been done which has been used by bankers, that is absolutely correct, but that audit documentation, it should be such that an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit, such audit firm should be able to understand कि लास्ट ऑडिट जब हुआ था उसमें क्या ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स परफॉर्म हुए थे, क्या ऑडिट एविडेंस था और क्या कंक्लूजन थे. ठीक है. सो नाउ मैनी ऑफ यू आर सेइंग दीक्षा, वर्षा, सिद्धि, आचरी, जिया, सुधांशु, रामचंद्र, हिमांशु, यू ऑल आर सेइंग मैम इट इज क्लियर. ठीक है. सो अभी इट इज लेफ्ट. देखो, so we have seen what audit procedure समझ आना चाहिए, audit evidence समझ आना चाहिए and conclusion समझ आना चाहिए. ठीक है. So now you will see that ये जो A point है इसका further explanation is given here and ये जो C point है इसका further explanation is given here. ठीक है. So now we are going to understand that. ठीक है. So it is mentioned that to understand the nature, timing, extent of audit procedures performed. ठीक है. So अब nature, timing, extent of audit procedures experienced auditor should be able to understand. For that, XYZ and associates shall record what all things? The identifying characteristics of specific items or matters tested. For example, let's say the auditor has tested 40% of sales. Sample basis पे होती है ना checking, है ना. You all have done inherent limitations of audit in chapter number 1. है ना. 100% checking is not possible. Let's say the auditor checks 40% of the sales. So those items should be specifically mentioned that these 40% of the sales have been checked. ठीक है. Who performed the audit work and the date of such work was completed. किसने perform किया and when such work was completed. Who reviewed the audit work and the date and extent of such review. है ना. तो when we are saying कि nature, timing, extent of audit procedures experienced auditor को समझ आना चाहिए, तो उसके लिए क्या रिकॉर्ड है. एक further explanation क्या दिया हुआ है that the identifying characteristics of specific item tested. है ना. If certain sales transactions are related party, the same should be mentioned. If 40% or let's say 50% of the traveling expenses are checked, that should be mentioned, right? Who performed the audit and the date and who reviewed the work and the date and extent of such review. ठीक है. So this was the first point. And here when we were understanding this point ना, अभी मैंने आपको क्या समझाया कि audit procedures performed, audit evidence obtained and the conclusions the auditor reached. ठीक है. Now you will see there is a term significant matters. So let's say during the conduct of audit, there were various related party transaction. ठीक है. Or let's say there were certain fraud risk factors. है ना. So if any significant matter is there which gives rise to any significant risk, है ना. So first of all, auditor is going to specifically mention that this was the significant matter. Then the auditor must have discussed that significant matter with the management of the company. So with whom such matter was discussed, the date of such matter, right? The date of such discussion. Further, if there is any inconsistency, so let us just try to understand this significant matter wala point again with the help of example. During the conduct of audit now, there was a point relating to what? Calculation of provision. Just a minute, what is this? So let's say some litigation was going on against the company, right? And there was a confusion as to whether a provision is to be made in the books of accounts or the same should be shown as a contingent liability. So auditor is applying his professional judgment here and auditor is considering it as a significant matter. So auditor must have discussed this matter with the management. So when and with whom such matter was discussed. ठीक है. Now let's say management said कि provision provide करेंगे, but according to auditor, contingent liability that amount is to be shown as a contingent liability. So what is this? This is one of the inconsistency. So auditor is going to mention as to how the same was resolved. समझ आता है? ठीक है. So we will have a look at it from the module. Just a minute. See. तो significant matters को क्या record करना है? The auditor shall document discussions of significant matters with management, those tasked with governance and others, including the nature of the significant matter discussed, when and with whom the discussion took place. If auditor identified information that is inconsistent with the auditor's final conclusion regarding a significant matter, the auditor shall document as to how the auditor addressed the inconsistency. ठीक है, तभी तो एक्सपीरियंस ऑडिटर को समझ आएगा ना कि क्या सिग्निफिकेंट मैटर था, किसके साथ डिस्कस किया और कैसे उसको रिजॉल्व किया इन केस ऑफ एनी इनकंसिस्टेंसी. ठीक है, सो लेट अस जस्ट समराइज दिस, है ना. अभी दिस फॉर्म कंटेंट एक्सटेंट वाला टॉपिक इज नॉट कंप्लीट. Let us just summarize it. See, what we have seen that it should enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit to understand three things. और वो three things क्या है? In order to learn, just try to remember the definition of audit documentation ना. So nature, timing, extent of audit procedures performed. Who performed the work? Oh, sorry, just a minute. So let us do it from the module. It is not mentioned properly here. So nature, timing, extent of audit procedures performed, the results of audit procedure and the audit evidence obtained, significant matters arising and the conclusions drawn. Now, nature, timing, extent of audit procedures के लिए the auditor should record what? The identifying characteristics of the specific items, who performed and on the date, who reviewed and the date and extent of such review. With respect to significant matter, simple है, अगर significant matter हुआ था तो auditor must have discussed it with management and those charged with governance. So what was the significant matter? The nature of significant matter. When was it discussed? With whom was it discussed? In case of any inconsistency, how the same was resolved. ठीक है. Further, SC 230 says that this is the broad guideline as to how the auditor should maintain a documentation. But yes, there are various factors affecting the form, content and extent of audit documentation. For example, many of you have already answered this when I asked you कि एक standard हो सकता है क्या? So many of you said no, because the businesses vary in size and complexity. So size and complexity of entity. See, a large organization vis-a-vis a very small trading firm. So the audit documentation, the form, content and extent of the audit documentation with respect to these two clients is going to vary. Complexity of entity. If there are certain complex transactions, let's say foreign exchange transactions are there, certain scrap sale are there, related party transactions are there, some mergers, acquisitions, obviously the working is going to be increased. The audit work is going to be increased. There will be more documentation. ठीक है? The nature of audit procedures performed. If the auditor is performing calculations, the content will include what? Calculations. If the auditor is sending external confirmation request, the content will be what? The external confirmation request, the replies. है ना? Identified risk of material misstatement. You all have done in chapter number 2, essay 315. है ना? Identifying and understanding the risk of material misstatement through understanding the entity and its environment. Students remember, and further you will be doing this essay in detail in chapter number 4. है ना? But why I am giving a reference to that? Because the third point says identified risk of material misstatement. Obviously, the risk of material misstatement identified is high. The auditor is going to do more work, meaning thereby that the extent of audit procedures, audit evidence conclusion is going to be more. है ना? Significance of audit evidence obtained. Let's say if the auditor is checking the fixed deposits. If he has a very significant audit evidence, let's say the quality of audit evidence is such that, let's say he is having the original fixed deposit. So this is such a strong audit evidence that only one audit evidence is also sufficient, right? So the form, content, extent of the audit documentation depends upon what? Significance of audit evidence obtained, the nature, extent of exceptions identified, fraud risk factors है, कुछ related party transactions है ना? So obviously the content, form and extent of audit procedures will change, thereby the audit evidence, thereby the conclusion, and the audit methodology and the tools the auditor is going to use. So these are the various general factors which affect what? The form, content and extent of audit documentation. So if you get a 4-mark question about the form, content, extent of audit documentation, so let us just summarize it. So first of all, you will be mentioning what that SC 230 में mentioned है as to what is going to affect the form, content, extent, है ना? So let us just summarize this topic and then we will take a break, just 2 minutes and then we will take a break. So I'm saying कि अगर 4-mark question आपके पास आता है form, content and extent of audit documentation, तो सबसे पहले तो you will be giving a reference to SC 230. Then you will mentioning that it should be such that it should enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection to understand what 3 things: the nature, timing, extent of audit procedures performed, the results of such audit procedures and the audit evidence, and the significant matters plus conclusions. ठीक है? Then it says that nature, timing, extent में आपको क्या mention करना है? Identifying characteristics plus as to who performed and when, who reviewed and when and to what extent. ठीक है? Significant matters में हमने क्या पढ़ा था? That with whom discussion was done, date, and in case of any inconsistency, how the same was addressed. Further, there are various factors that affect the form, content and extent of audit documentation. So I hope student it is clear. Students, please, I need answers from your side. Tell me, is this topic clear? So we have covered till paragraph number 1.5. Yes, Gia, you are absolutely correct. So the requirement of SC 230 is that an experienced auditor, though he is not having any previous connection with the audit, he should be able to understand the audit procedures, audit evidence and the conclusions. And this feels so good that all of you have mentioned that, ma'am, it is absolutely clear. Okay. So it is now 7:15. So we will do one thing. We will take a quick break of 10 minutes here. At 7:25 we'll meet. And in the break, before going for the break, students, please tell me whether the way I'm teaching, the way we are discussing, the way we are interacting, whether you are able to understand this chapter or not. Okay? So a quick break of 10 minutes here. So welcome back students after the break. I hope love now there is audio, now there is video also, right? And thank you students for sending in your replies, for telling me that you are able to understand this chapter and you are finding the teaching style comfortable. Chalo, that's good. So students, in these notes now, like many of you are saying that ma'am, please share the notes, this Word file. So as such, I haven't written anything new. Like whatever is mentioned here is given in your module. And why I'll not be sharing these notes on the portal? Because in these notes now I use a number of short forms. I also get confused as to what I have written because I write in bits and parts. So this is going to create a confusion in your mind also. What you can do is you can just take a screenshot or you can just take a summary, whatever I have mentioned in your module, because I always share the screen. So is it clear? Okay. Now let us start with the other topic. What were we studying before the break? We studied form, content and extent of audit documentation in terms of essay 230. Now tell me what all are included in audit documentation, examples of audit documentation. So see, a very easy topic. So it may be recorded on paper or electronic or other media. So it can be your hard copies whereby you are maintaining a file. You must have seen proper box files are maintained for clients, or electronic in your pen drive or your soft copies. Okay? It includes audit programs, analysis, issues, memorandum. Memorandum is what? Summary. So summary of the issues, summaries of significant matters, letters of confirmation. We have taken example of external confirmation and representation. So we will be doing an essay with respect to written representation. Essay 580. So there we will see that whatever auditor is taking in writing from the external parties or from the management, so everything will be included as audit documentation. Checklist. So what is a checklist? Whereby it will be mentioned that with respect to the debtors, all these points need to be checked. So the person who is conducting the audit, he'll be ticking against all those points as to whether that has been done. Like bank statement, tick, it has been taken. Ledger copies, tick, it has been taken. Calculation of provision, tick, it has been done. So checklist, and corresponding including email concerning significant matters. Simple. Then see these two paragraphs now. In fact, the entire chapter is important, but MCQ true false ke liye na, there can be good questions can be framed from these two paragraphs. So auditor may include copies of entity record like significant specific contract or agreement as part of audit documentation. If you remember, we have done a point now that retaining a record of matters of continuing significance. There I gave you example that suppose any license is there of a pharmaceutical company, or let's say any rent agreement is there, or any other contract is there. So yes, that can be kept as a part of audit documentation. And audit documentation is not a substitute for entities accounting record. So where the entities accounting records are to be given, there the company cannot say that auditor, you give your audit documentation. Audit documentation is not a substitute for entities accounting records. ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन किसने बनाया है? ऑडिटर ने. किस लिए? अपने पर्पस के लिए, अपने वर्किंग के लिए. So those are not a substitute for accounting records. And further, students, we will see that with respect to the ownership of audit documentation, something is contained in SQC1, which we'll be doing just now. Okay. So this is important, that it is not a substitute of the entity's accounting record. Further, now students, tell me, let's say that you are the auditor of ABC Limited and you are calculating depreciation with respect to the fixed assets of ABC Limited. Okay? You did certain calculations, then those are, let's say, the preliminary calculations, the rough calculations. Okay? Then you did new calculations, then again new calculations. So just try to think the calculations that have been replaced by new calculation. So the first set of calculation, whether that needs to be included as a part of audit documentation, those have been removed. Those have been replaced by new calculations. है ना? So what have I asked you? I've said that let's say this is your first set of calculation of depreciation. Calculation of depreciation, जिसको आपने हटाकर you have done certain new calculations. So you are going to keep in your audit documentation 1 and 2, only 1 or only 2. Yes, Bhumika, you are correct. So my answer, yes, only 2, है ना? देखो ना, हमने क्या पढ़ा था? Form, content and extent. Extent should be such that it should enable an experienced auditor having no previous correction. अगर आप ये वाले सारे calculations रखोगे तो experienced auditor तो छोड़ो, आप ही confuse हो जाओगे ना that what are the final calculations, है ना? So superseded drafts. The auditor need not include in audit documentation superseded drafts of working papers and financial statement, notes that reflect incomplete or preliminary thinking, previous copies of documents corrected for typographical or other errors, and duplicates of documents. Experienced auditor को understand आना चाहिए ना, है ना? तो confusion थोड़ी ना create करना है. What is meant by superseded is replaced. तो अगर कोई आपका draft है which has been now replaced by a new working, so that superseded draft should not be included in the audit documentation. कोई incomplete या preliminary is what initial thinking है आपकी. कोई previous copies of documents अब उसको आपने correct किया है for any let's say typographical error or any other error or any duplicate paper, that should not be kept. ठीक है? So this is again MCQ true false के लिए very important, and this point also that audit documentation is not a substitute for the entity's accounting record. ठीक है? Is it clear? So just keep in mind ना that it should enable an experienced auditor having no previous connection to understand various things, है ना? Audit procedures, audit evidence and the conclusions. अगर आप rough calculations रखते जाओगे, this is going to confuse you also in when you will refer those documentation in the future. ठीक है? Clear? ठीक है? Now 1.7 we will take later up. 1.8. So if you remember when we were discussing audit documentation, I told you when we were discussing the definition of audit documentation, I told you that audit file भी हम read करेंगे. ठीक है? So audit file क्या है? बहुत simple language में समझते हैं. देखो, if one of the audit firms, let's say the engagement partner with respect to the audit is CAA. ठीक है? He and his team, the team is conducting the audit of let's say 5 companies together. ठीक है? So audit documentation ऐसे 230 क्या कहता है कि आपको audit documentation maintain करना है जहां पे आप audit procedures, audit evidence और conclusions का एक documentation record रखेंगे. Audit file क्या कहता है कि यही सब काम करना है, और यहाँ पर what is the keyword? Specific engagement. अगर आपके पास 5 clients हैं तो एक ही box file में सभी के documents नहीं रखेंगे. You will keep separate folders for specific engagement. Simple है, logical है. So let us just read. One or more folders or other storage media in physical or electronic form containing records that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. So the keyword here is what? Specific engagement. Just a minute. Just have a look at the definition again. So audit file may be defined as one or more folders or other storage media in physical or electronic form containing the records that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. एक particular engagement, audit engagement के लिए, specific engagement के लिए, when the team is maintaining the audit documentation, that is called what? Audit file. ठीक है? Clear? Now, earlier I have left this topic now, 1.7. So now we'll be doing this topic with topic 1.9. ठीक है? So, I hope it is clear. Audit file clear है? क्या होता है? Simple है ना? Audit documentation for a specific engagement. In a simple language. Yes, the definition given by the essay says what? One or more folders or other storage media in physical or electronic form containing the records that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. Clear? Now tell me, when should the audit file be made? There was a query also with respect to this point. So there I haven't taken up that query. Tell me, should it be maintained side by side? Should the documentation be maintained side by side? Or should it be done after the audit has been completed? So first and foremost, how the audit file, the documentation should be done. Yes, Ramachandra, you are correct. So जितना आप डिवाइड करते जाओगे उतना ही तो इजी होएगा ना आपके लिए, तभी तो बेनिफिट्स ऑफ ऑडिट डॉक्यूमेंटेशन विल बी देयर. रामचंद्र, इज इट क्लियर? अदर्स प्लीज रिप्लाई. व्हाट वाज माय क्वेरी? हाँ, कि टाइमली बेसिस पे करना चाहिए साइड बाय साइड और आफ्टर द ऑडिट हैज बीन कंप्लीटेड. सो एवरीवन हैज आंसर्ड एक्सेप्ट फॉर 2. That side by side. See, when you are conducting an audit and side by side, you are maintaining a record of all those documents. If take a situation that one audit engagement team, it is conducting the audit of ABC Limited. It is documenting, it is recording all the working papers side by side as and when the work is being performed. Timely basis पे the same has been recorded. Vis-a-vis a second situation जहां audit complete हो चुका है, उसके बाद you are assembling all those. Obviously, the benefits of maintaining audit documentation on a timely basis side by side, that is going to reap more benefits. The qualities of audit is going to enhance. Since all the papers are documented on timely basis, it is going to help the audit engagement partner in reviewing the work that has been done, right? है ना? ठीक है. But see students, documenting all the working papers, recording all the working papers, it is advisable what? Timely basis पे होना चाहिए. Why? Because benefits उससे ज़्यादा होंगे. Quality of the audit will be improved. Review में help करेगा. And it is very obvious that if you document the papers, the working papers after the audit has been completed, it might be possible that you forget anything. है ना? कि you may forget to record any paper. You may forget as to how or where is the calculation sheet, है ना? Or how you calculated it. So the quality enhances if it is done on the timely basis. ठीक है? But students, see, it is a very mechanical process also. You are compiling all the papers, है ना? Let's say there are 4 or 5 team members. You are collecting all the papers from all the members, or all the papers, working papers are been collected at one place. Index has been made. The cross referencing has been done. है ना? Duplicates are been removed. So SC 230 says that timely basis पे करना है. Why? Because quality will be enhanced. Review workmate will help. Later on अगर आप assemble करते हो, that is going to what? Reduce the it may lead to what? Neglecting any point, है ना? But in case any mechanical administrative kind of work like cross-referencing, putting the initials, है ना? Arranging the data systematically, if any such administrative kind of work is left, that can be done after the date of the audit report. ठीक है? So what I have said, let us just summarize it, है ना? Then we will look at the module. बहुत logical है और बहुत interesting है. ठीक है. So for two students who were saying कि after the audit has been completed, so let me just clarify it to you. So what we have seen, audit file क्या होता है? Audit file होता है जब आप audit documentation for a specific engagement maintain करते हो. A definition is given in your module. ठीक है. Now it says that audit file को या audit documentation को आपको timely basis पे करना चाहिए. Why? Because it will enhance the quality of the audit work. Logical है, review करने में help करता है. And अगर आप after audit report करते हो, you assemble the documents, then chances are that they will be less accurate. Why? Because chances है ना कि आप कुछ भूल जाओ, है ना, कुछ आप record करना रह जाता है. ठीक है. However, administrative kind of changes, like you have maintained a documentation, है ना, but अब यहाँ पर आपको एक index बनाकर numbering करनी है, आपको sort करने हैं डेटा. Sort is arranging, है ना, आपको initials करवाने हैं, that is signing off, है ना. You have to remove the duplicates. So यहाँ पर you are not performing any new audit procedure as such ना, ये तो बस administrative kind of work है ना. So such administrative kind of work can be done after the date of audit report. देखो audit report आ गया, इसके बाद you cannot do any new audit procedure. कोई new audit procedure थोड़ी ना कर दोगे कि new audit evidence आ गया, new conclusion आ गया, new audit report आ गया, नहीं ना. तो audit report आने के बाद certain time period has been given with respect to assembly of audit file, assemble करना audit file को, and that too only administrative changes can be made, only administrative changes. ठीक है. So first of all, only administrative changes, no new audit procedures can be done after the date of audit procedure. Logical है, ठीक है, क्योंकि ऑडिट प्रोसीजर के बेस पे ही तो आपने ऑडिट एविडेंस लिया, ऑडिट एविडेंस के बेस पे ही तो कंक्लूजन आया और ऑडिट रिपोर्ट आया. अब ऑडिट रिपोर्ट थोड़ी ना चेंज कर दोगे अपनी ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स करके. ठीक है. एंड एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव चेंज कर सकते हो, तो वो भी क्या इनफाइनाइट पीरियड के लिए नहीं, नॉट मोर देन 60 days from the date of audit report. Date of audit report means the date when the audit report is signed. So not more than 60 days. ठीक है. आप एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव काइंड ऑफ चेंजेस कर सकते हो और असेंबल कर सकते हो ऑडिट फाइल को. ये नहीं लिखा है कि न्यू ऑडिट प्रोसीजर्स कर सकते हो, सिर्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव काइंड ऑफ चेंजेस कर सकते हो. ठीक है. नाउ यू मे आस्क मैम, okay, now we have understood that we need to maintain audit file and changes of administrative nature can be done only after the date of audit report, and that too not more than 60 days from the date of audit report. ठीक है. Now tell me, you may ask me, मैम कब तक रिटेन करना है इस फाइल को? What will be the retention period? ऑफिस में कितने टाइम तक इस फाइल को रखना है? So that time period is also given, which says it shall be no shorter than 7 years from the date of the auditor's report. है ना, 7 सालों के लिए तो आपको रखना ही रखना है. ठीक है. वेरी गुड क्वेश्चंस फॉर योर MCQ, योर ट्रू फॉल्स. ठीक है. सो अभी तो हमने बहुत ही सिंपल लैंग्वेज में समझा है. लेट अस जस्ट हैव अ लुक एट द मॉड्यूल अबाउट द असेंबली ऑफ फाइनल ऑडिट फाइल. So सबसे पहले हमने क्या देखा? Auditor shall assemble the audit documentation in audit file and complete the administrative process on a timely basis after the date of auditor's report. SQC1, you all have done. There was a reference to this standard of quality control in chapter number 1. So what is the name? Quality control for firms that perform audit and review of historical financial information and other assurance and related services. It requires the firm to establish policies and procedure for timely completion of assembly of audit file. So first and foremost, किसका duty है? That the audit firm, it should have the internal policies and procedures for the entire audit firm कि देखो इतने टाइम के अंदर timely basis पे the assembly of final audit file should be done. right? An appropriate time limit within which to complete the assembly of audit file is ordinarily not more than 60 days from the date of auditor's report. Not more than 60 days. Completion of assembly of final audit file after the date of auditor's report is an administrative process. Does not involve the performance of new audit procedures or drawing new conclusions. Why? Because अब तो report जा चुका है ना, अब थोड़ी ना आप new audit procedures करोगे assembly of audit file में. Only the changes of administrative nature can be done. And what are those such changes? Deleting or discarding superseded documentation. कोई remove, replaced document is there, you can remove that. Sorting is what? Arranging systematically. Collating is collecting. Cross-referencing, whereby you are putting the reference or of the page number working papers. Signing of completion checklist relating to file assembly process. Relating to the file assembly process, whether this point with respect to file assembly process has been done. Documenting the audit evidence discussed and agreed with the relevant members before the date of auditor's report. All those evidence which have been discussed earlier before the date of audit report, now you may document that. ठीक है? So you can see only the administrative kind of changes. Mechanical है ना, इसमें कुछ आप professional judgment थोड़ा लगा रहे हो. Further, after the assembly of the final audit file has been completed, the auditor shall not delete or discard the documentation of any nature before the end of its retention period. And what is that retention period? Again, SQC1 requires the firms to establish policies and procedure for retention of engagement documentation. The retention period for audit engagement ordinarily is no shorter than 7 years from the date of auditor's report or the date of the group auditor's report. ठीक है. So if it is a group auditor's report, then from that date 7 years के लिए तो वो documentation को audit file को retain करना ही है. The auditor cannot remove any document or delete, discard any audit documentation of any nature. So Mohit, your doubt is not clear. Please specify it. Mohit, your doubt is not clear. Please repeat it. ठीक है? Is it clear? So what we have done, let me just keep it all the things together. So we have done audit file, है ना? तो audit file का assembly कैसे करना है? On a timely basis. ठीक है? SQC1 says that first of all, it is the duty of the firm, audit firm, to establish the policies and procedures for timely completion of assembly of audit files. But a standard has been given which says that such assembly should be done in not more than 60 days after the date of the auditor's report. And assembly में what all kind of changes can be done? Can any new audit procedure be done? No. Why? Because audit report has now been issued. ठीक है? Has now been given. Has now been signed. In fact, after the date of the audit report, it means signing of the audit report. ठीक है? And only the administrative kind of changes like deleting, discarding. So you may get a 3-mark question that what are the administrative kind of changes that can be made. है ना? Give certain examples. ठीक है? So Varsha, these initials are with respect to the assembly process. ठीक है? So deleting, discarding the superseded documentation, sorting, collating or cross-referencing, signing off on completion checklist relating to fine assembly process. ठीक है? And anything which has been discussed earlier, documenting that audit evidence. Can auditor delete, discard such audit documentation? Auditor cannot do that, the audit firm, before 7 years from the date of the auditor's report or the group auditor's report. ठीक है? Is it clear? So Varsha, I hope your doubt is clear. See, Mohit, administrative kind of changes are basically what? Mechanical changes. कोई errors हैं. Like for example, there are duplicate papers. तो आप एक को remove कर दोगे. है ना, तो आप वो मेंशन थोड़ी ना करोगे कि दैट दिस पेपर हैज बीन रिमूव बिकॉज ऑफ दिस रीजन. मैकेनिकल चेंजेस है ना, नो प्रोफेशनल जजमेंट. यहाँ पर आप क्या कर रहे हो, डिलीट कर रहे हो सुपरसीडेड डॉक्यूमेंटेशन. रफ कैलकुलेशन है, फाइनल है, तो रफ को हटा दो, है ना. यू आर कलेक्टिंग द डॉक्यूमेंट्स फ्रॉम एवरीवन, you are putting them together, you are cross referencing working papers. So this is what administrative mechanical kind of work. ठीक है, is it clear, Mohit? So no need to asset disclose. So the answer to your query is no. ठीक है, is it clear? And this topic, see यहाँ पर भी यही है that audit documentation should be prepared on a timely basis because it enhances the quality, facilitates effective review and evaluation. Documentation prepared after the audit work has been performed is likely to be less accurate than documentation prepared at the time that such work is performed. लॉजिकल है. बाद में आप डॉक्यूमेंट करोगे, बाद में यू आर गोइंग टू मेंटेन अ रिकॉर्ड दैट इज गोइंग टू बी लेस एक्यूरेट विज अ सिचुएशन वेयर बाय यू आर recording on a timely basis. Clear? Is it clear? So this example illustration, again your homework, very easy illustrations, go through these as your homework. Yes, administrative changes के लिए भी कोई infinite time period नहीं है, not more than 60 days from the date of the auditor's report. Sudhanshu, you are absolutely correct. ठीक है. Now students, we have studied a topic with respect to significant matter ना, अभी हमने पढ़ा था, कहाँ पर पढ़ा था, where we were discussing about form, content, extent of audit documentation, whereby we saw that how the significant matters were addressed, with whom they were discussed, inconsistency को कैसे address किया, that the auditor needs to document. ठीक है. So these are various example of significant matters. So I'm giving you this paragraph 1.1 as a homework to read because we have discussed about significant matters when we did the topic of form, content and extent of the audit documentation. In case of any doubt, we can discuss that in the next session. Relating to significant matters, there is another topic which is again very important. आपका 3 mark questions can easily come. Write a note on completion memorandum or audit documentation summary. So just try to consider a situation जहाँ पर, let's say in the audit documentation, the auditor, during the entire course conduct of audit, the auditor came across 10 significant matters. ठीक है, and he documented as to how they were addressed, with whom they were addressed, the date, in case of any inconsistency, how the same was addressed. ठीक है. So in the entire file, there are documents and containing the significant matters. This is situation 1. Take another situation, second situation, whereby significant matters are mentioned, but along with that there is a summary of all the significant matters and how they were addressed. As a part of audit documentation, एक summary दिया गया है कि ये सारे significant matters थे जो कि यहाँ पे mentioned है, and this is the way it was addressed. Which situation is better in case of large or complex audit? Quickly tell me, first or second? Quickly send in your replies, first or second? So whose doubt is this? Krishna? नहीं, yeah, Miss Anjana. See, rest of you please send in your replies, 1 or 2. Anjana, you are saying that, ma'am, with respect to the assembly of the audit file, it is mentioned that 7 years tak no document will be discarded or deleted. So read that line again. After the assembly of audit file has been completed, complete हो गया है, उसके बाद no document will be deleted. During the assembly of final audit file, तो deletion can be done of superseded documents. Varsha, Anjana, is it clear? Yes, Krishna, you are correct. And Anjana, you also reply whether your doubt is clear. So many of you are saying, ma'am, second situation. Obviously, if you are having a summary of all the significant matters, that is going to help the auditor. Let's say it is a recurring audit. That is, you are the auditor this year and you are the auditor next year also. So next year, when you are referring to the audit documentation file and you see there is a summary of all the significant matters, this is going to facilitate what? Efficient and effective review. Quickly आपको पता चल जाएगा ना कि last year ये सब significant matters थे. Vis-a-vis a situation whereby you are going through the entire file, you may overlook any of the significant matter, है ना? So simple. So it says that, and a summary of such significant matter and the way they were addressed, this is called what? Completion memorandum or audit documentation summary. So you may get a short note on completion memorandum or your audit documentation summary. So auditor may consider it helpful to prepare and retain as a part of audit documentation a summary, sometimes known as completion memorandum, that describes the significant matters identified during the audit. कौन-कौन से significant matters थे and how they were addressed. क्या फायदा होगा? Such a summary may facilitate effective, efficient review and inspection of the audit documentation, particularly for large and complex audits. है ना? Effective, efficient review होगा ना? And large and complex audit में जहाँ the number of documents are huge, because more audit procedures, more evidence, more conclusions आए तो more audit documentation, like the volume will be more. है ना? So in that case, it is going to facilitate the effective and efficient review. ठीक है? Is it clear? Is it clear? Simple topic. ठीक है? Now the last topic with respect to this essay 230 is ownership of audit documentation. Without looking, okay, I'll change the sheet. Tell me, who is the owner of audit documentation? Is it first the client, second the auditor? Tell me, quickly send in your replies. Yes, Varsha, you are correct. Such summary is going to save the time. तभी तो क्या बोला है? Efficient and effective review. ठीक है, send in your replies. Owner of audit documentation कौन है? Whose property is audit documentation? Is it the clients or the auditors? Students, quickly send in your reply. I need to start with audit evidence also today itself. So Himanshu has given correct answer. Then Loga Sundar, Mohit, Sonali, Rivati, Tanisha, Jia, Dikshita, Shazia, Mohit, Ronak, Diksha, Ramchandra, Abhishek, Ketan, Achri, Yasir Ahmed, Bhumika, Sonali, Ronak Kumar, Bhavani, absolutely correct. The auditor. See, auditor has maintained the audit documentation. It is the working papers of the auditor. So the audit documentation is the property of the auditor. ठीक है? Is it clear? SQC 1 says that, see, tell me, I've said that the auditor is the owner, or I can say audit documentation is the property of the auditor. ठीक है? Auditor has done the work for his audit purpose now. And we have seen in the definition that these are also called working papers. किसके working papers है? Auditor के है ना, तो auditor की property हुई ना. Now my next question to you, can the client force the auditor to share audit documentation with it? Send a yes or no. Read the question carefully. Can client force the auditor to share the audit documentation with the client or the management of the client? So the answer is no, because these are the property of the auditor. ठीक है? So I have answered it. Why? Because so many of you have answered absolutely correctly. You have said no. फोर्स नहीं कर सकता, ठीक है। नाउ माय नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, कैन द ऑडिटर at his own discretion or I can say own choice give copy of audit documentation of some, let's say some part of audit documentation to client at request of client? Quickly send in your replies. Force नहीं कर सकते, which is absolutely correct. क्या ऑडिटर अपनी मर्जी से, अगेन a yes or no, make available the portions or extracts from audit documentation to the client? So Bhumika, Jia, Diksha, yes. So you are saying yes, which is absolutely correct. तो सबसे पहले हमने क्या देखा, audit documentation is the property of the auditor. Can client force the auditor? No. Can auditor at his own discretion is what? Choice. Make available the extract copy of the audit documentation to the client? Yes. ठीक है. But when the auditor is giving the copy of the audit documentation to the client, it should not affect his independence. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए that auditor has become what? Biased, and then he's giving that copy to the client. He's providing certain calculations to the client कि इसको ठीक कर लो. Independence पे there should not be any threat. ठीक है. So auditor may at his own discretion make available such copy, but it should not, the independence, it should not, let us just have a read at it from the module. So SQC1, Standard on Quality Control 1, provides that unless otherwise specified by law or regulation, audit documentation is the property of the auditor. It is the property of the auditor. He made at his discretion, discretion is what? Choice, own choice, make portions of or extracts from audit documentation available to the client provided such disclosure does not undermine the validity of the work performed. जो काम आपने किया है उसका value कम नहीं होना चाहिए by sharing it with the client. Or in the case of assurance, it should not undermine. Undermine is what? Weaken the independence of the auditor or his personnel. Bias होकर auditor should not provide the calculations or part of his working paper to the client. He may at his own discretion provide the extracts from audit documentation to the client. But first and foremost, what is the thumb rule? That audit documentation, unless otherwise required by law, audit documentation is the property of the auditor. ठीक है. So is it clear? So with this we have completed essay 230, which is given in your module. Let us just quickly have a look at what we have done, what essay 230 contains, and then we'll be starting with audit evidence. So IT, please see, students are saying some sounds are coming repeatedly. Please see. So
मैम एक बार आप ब्राउजर में चेक करें.
ऐसे तो सब ठीक है. ठीक है. So we are giving a quick revision to what we have done today in essay 230, है ना? So the name is what? Audit documentation. Very simple name. Audit documentation, it deals with the auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statements. Students, let us just resolve that noise issue. in essay 230. So essay 230, the name is audit documentation, and it deals with the auditor's responsibility to prepare audit documentation for an audit of financial statement, Hana. And the specific documentation requirements given in other essays do not limit the application of this essay. Clear? What is the definition? It is a record of audit procedures performed, relevant audit evidence obtained, and the conclusions the auditor reached, and these are also called what? Working papers or your work papers. Objective and the nature is what? Providing evidence with respect to the basis of the auditor's report, and that the audit was evidence that the audit was planned and performed in accordance with essays and applicable legal and regulatory requirements. Purpose क्या है? Engagement team को help करेगा to plan and perform the audit, to supervise, direct and discharge the review responsibilities, and to see as to who is accountable for the work. Also retaining a record of matters of continuing significance to future audits. And the next 2 points relate to inspection. The fifth one is relating to internal inspection in terms of SQC 1, and the sixth point is relating to what? Your external inspection. Form, content and extent. Let me just take you through the summary that we have prepared for it. Hana? So experienced auditor having no previous connection with the audit should be able to understand the nature, timing, extent of audit procedures performed, the results of audit procedure performed and audit evidence obtained, and the significant matters and the conclusions. Nature, timing, extent में क्या auditor shall record? The identifying characteristics of specific item tested, who did perform the audit procedures and when, who reviewed the audit procedures and when, and to what extent. And significant matters make what is going to be recorded, that with whom such matters were discussed, the date, and in case of an inconsistency, how the same were resolved. Students, I hope you all are with me. You are able to now hear my voice. And the form, content, extent depends upon various factors. Form, content, extent of audit documentation depends upon various factors, right? The various examples are audit program, analysis, issue memoranda, summaries of significant matters, letters of confirmation and representation, checklist and correspondence. And we have seen that the auditor may include copies of entities records like specific contracts or agreements, but audit documentation is not a substitute for the entities accounting records. Okay? Then we saw that such the auditor need not include any superseded drafts of working paper, any preliminary or incomplete thinking, previous copies of documents corrected for typographical or other errors, and duplicates of the documents. Okay? So I told you, very important from point of view of your MCQs or true false. Timely preparation में we did this topic with audit file. So first let us see what is meant by audit file. So one or more folders or other storage media in physical or electronic form containing records that comprise the audit documentation for a specific engagement. So specific engagement is very important here. And we saw that the assembly of final audit file, it should be done on timely basis after the date of auditor's report. So assembly का मतलब ही क्या है? Administrative kind of work. ठीक है? SQC 1 says that firm need to establish policies and procedures whereby it should require timely completion of assembly of audit file. Hana? And it should not be more than 60 days after the date of the auditor's report. Date of auditor's report means when the same has been, audit report has been signed. After that 60 days के अंदर आप assembly कर सकते हो, उसमें भी no new audit procedures will be performed, only the administrative kind of changes like deleting discarded superseded documentation, sorting, collating, cross-referencing working papers, signing of completion checklist, or documenting the audit evidence which has already been discussed. And after completing the assembly of audit file, 60 days का time period खत्म, delete जो करना था कर दिया, अब complete हो गया. Now from that, no shorter than 7 years, that is, no shorter than 7 years from the date of auditor's report, the auditor will remove or delete any documentation. ठीक है? And this I have given you as a homework, very simple, आप पढ़ लेना. Completion memorandum क्या है? Summary of how significant matters were identified and how they were addressed. ठीक है? Ownership किसका है? Auditor का, unless otherwise specified by law. Discretion पे he can make available the extracts or copies to the client, but it should not undermine the validity, weaken the validity of the work performed or the independence of the auditor or his any of the personnel. Is it clear? Quickly send in your replies. SA 230 clear hai? And students, I assure you, once you give a reading to this essay from your module line by line, including all the illustrations, examples that are given in your module, once or maybe twice, you are going to remember it. I'm sure about that. But for that, you have to give a reading to this essay with concentration till where we have done. Okay? So Yashika is saying specific engagement. का क्या मतलब है यहाँ पर? So Yashika, it means I told you ना that let's say 5 clients का audit चल रहा है, ABC Limited, MNO Limited, XYZ, है ना? तो specific हर client का अलग से audit file maintain होगा, specific. ठीक है Yashika, is it clear? ठीक है. So now we'll be starting with, I know we have 10-11 minutes, so now we'll be starting with what the other essay, which is what SA 500 audit evidence. ठीक है. So just we will have a discussion as to what is actually contained in SA 500. Quite lengthy essay. It will be completed in the next session only. SA 500 and the name is what? Audit evidence. अब हम audit evidence के लिए there is a separate essay. We are studying that essay. Why? Because you all have written, you all have given me answers that, ma'am, the audit report is based on the audit evidence, है ना? तो अब now there is a responsibility on the auditor that the auditor needs to perform the audit procedures in order to draw sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Why audit evidence is required? In order to let me just correct myself. In order to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence. Why the auditor is required to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence? Because he needs to draw conclusion. Why? Because he needs to give his audit report. Hana? So SA 500 constitutes as to, it consists of the details with respect to audit evidence. कि क्या क्या audit evidence हो सकता है? What are the various sources of audit evidence? And students, you will see that whenever the term audit evidence is used, we always say that the auditor should obtain sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. So SA 500 also specifically gives the explanation with respect to sufficiency and appropriateness of audit evidence. So homework for you is to find out the meaning of the term sufficient and appropriate. है ना? Next session में we'll be discussing it. But sufficient क्या होता है and appropriate क्या होता है? ठीक है? So let us have a look at the definition of the term audit evidence. Before looking at the definition of the term audit evidence, let us just have a look at the dictionary meaning of the term audit evidence. So evidence. So the dictionary meaning says facts, signs that make you believe that something is true. Read it again. Facts, signs that make you believe that something is true. So the synonym can be what? Proof. है ना? So if the auditor is saying that the financial statement reflects a true and fair view, he needs audit evidence for that. Also, if the auditor wants to say he is giving an opinion that the financial statement do not reflect a true and fair view, that also needs to be based on what? Audit evidence, right? So what is the definition of audit evidence that is given by SA 500? It says that audit evidence is the information used by the auditor, and information is a broad term. We will see in the next session what all is included is information. So information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. Audit documentation में आपने क्या पढ़ा था? Audit procedures, audit evidence and conclusions. अब यहाँ पर आप क्या पढ़ रहे हो? Audit evidence is the information based on which auditor is arriving at the conclusion, based on which the auditor's opinion is given, or on which the auditor's opinion is based. So let us have a look at this definition again from your module. Audit evidence may be defined as the information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. Okay? See students, auditing is a very logical process. It is a very logical process. When the auditor is giving an expert opinion, he is reviewing the actual position that has been given in the financial statement. And whatever information he is using in order to draw the conclusion, in order to give the opinion, that constitute what? Audit evidence. Okay? That constitute what? Audit evidence. Okay? Further, I told you that, if you remember, we have discussed this objective of the auditor. The objective of the auditor is to design the audit procedures in such a way as to enable the auditor to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence to be able to draw conclusion on which to base auditor's opinion. So what is the objective? कि auditor को कुछ audit procedures perform करने हैं. क्यों perform करने हैं? So that he can obtain audit evidence. क्यों obtain करने हैं? So that he can draw conclusions. क्यों draw करना है? So that he can give his opinion. So this is the objective of the auditor in terms of SA 500. Is it clear? And what is the name? The name of the essay is Audit Evidence. As simple as that. SA 230 was what? Audit documentation. SA 500 is what? Audit evidence. Okay? And let us just have a quick look at these boxes also. So audit evidence is information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. I told you that this term information is very broad. Okay? In order to understand this term information, I need all of you to give answers to my questions. So my question number 1 is, tell me, when the auditor is using any information, just a minute, let me just write it. So what we have seen, audit evidence क्या होता है? It is the information used by the auditor to draw conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. Tell me, just give yes or no. Are the ledger copies, do they constitute audit evidence? A quick yes or no. So first is ledger. Second is, let's say, some cost sheets prepared by management. Are they audit evidence? So you need to write yes, like 1 and yes or no. Third, the minutes of the meetings. Look at the definition and then answer. So 1, 2 and 3, I need 3 answers from you. Yes, Bhumika, you are correct. See, the definition says information used by the auditor in arriving at the conclusions on which the auditor's opinion is based. Okay? So let's say auditor is using the debtor's ledger, right? And he's drawing at various conclusions. So will it constitute audit evidence? Yes. Cost sheets prepared by the management. Let's say there are working sheets which are being used by the auditor. or let's say any depreciation schedule. So will it constitute evidence? Yes. Let's say minutes of the meetings are there. Suppose some share capital, some issue of share capital has been done. Hana? So in the minutes of the meetings, everything will be mentioned as to the resolution passed, how many shares, the numbers, the price. So will it help the auditor in concluding as to whether such issue of share capital has been as per the legal requirements, the requirements of the Companies Act 2013? Obviously, the answer is yes. So all these are what the information used by the auditor in drawing at the conclusion. See, conclusion is to be drawn with respect to each and every item of the financial statement, and then an overall opinion will be obtained, right? So whatever auditor is going to, whatever information the auditor is going to use, that is going to form the part of what? Audit evidence. Okay? Let us have a look at it from the module. So audit evidence includes information contained in the accounting records, like the invoices, the contracts, the accounting entries, the supporting records. Just a minute. The sheet is hanged. Just a minute. So let me just write it here. Just a minute. So the information includes the information contained in accounting records underlying the financial statement. Underlying the financial statement means the accounting records based on which the financial statements are drawn and other information. So what is the information contained in the accounting records? Let us just have a look. My PDF is hanged, so I'll just let us have an oral discussion with respect to this. That the invoices, the contract copies, right? The accounting entries, then your ledgers, journal entries, right? Any adjustments that have been made, the records such as worksheets, the spreadsheets, cost allocation, computation, the reconciliations prepared by management. So all these are what? The information contained in the accounting records, which has been used in the preparation of the financial statement, right? Now other information is what? The example I gave you is what? Minutes. देखो minutes of the meeting से तो आपने financial statements नहीं बनाए ना, but these minutes are going to authenticate the financial statements कि जो financial statement में share capital आ रहा है ना, that has been in terms of the laws and regulations, the Companies Act का requirement meet हुआ है ना, minutes of the meeting. Or you can say external confirmation from the debtors. So are the external confirmation from the debtors part of accounting records? No. But this is a very useful information, other information. So the term information given in the definition of the audit evidence is a very wide term. It includes the information contained in accounting records underlying the financial statement. Underlying the financial statement means that based on which the financial statements are drawn. All those accounting records, whatever information is there, that will be included in what? Audit evidence. And other information. The examples are what? Minutes of the meeting. देखो minutes of the meeting से external confirmation से तो आप कोई accounting, आप कोई financial statement नहीं बना रहे हो ना. But yes, they provide they authenticate, they support the financial statement. External confirmation क्या support करता है? Debtor balance correct आ रहा है. Minutes क्या support करता है? In our example, share capital correct आ रहा है, right? So this term information is very wide. So see, students see, यहाँ पे there is a doubt of Bhumika. That is the last doubt for today. उसके बाद we'll end the session. Just 2 or 3 minutes. See, when we are forming an opinion on the financial statement, we obtain the audit evidence with respect to each and every item of the financial statement. In the next session, we'll be studying about the topic of assertion. है ना, तो सभी आइटम्स ऑफ फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट के लिए ऑडिटर इज ऑब्टेनिंग द ऑडिट एविडेंस, द इंफॉर्मेशन. अब शेयर कैपिटल ड्यूरिंग द ईयर इशू हुआ है, सो ऑडिटर विल हैव टू सी ना वेदर इट इज इन कंप्लायंस विद कंपनीज एक्ट 2013 और नॉट. ही कैन ऑलवेज गो थ्रू द मिनट्स ऑफ द मीटिंग्स ना of the meeting, and he can see whether the required resolution was passed or not, whether the rate at which it has been passed, the number of shares that has been issued, है ना, if any sweat equity shares have been issued, then whether the conditions are satisfied or not, है ना, if shares have been issued at securities premium, so whether securities premium amount has been transferred or not. So he can just have a look at the minutes of the meeting now, and he can conclude about a particular item of financial statement, which is what share capital in our example. ठीक है भूमिका, is it clear? ठीक है. So the auditor can he will use a lot of information from the financial statement, from the accounting records and other information also, which is going to support the financial statement and his opinion with respect to the financial statement. ठीक है. So abhi I am not taking up further with this essay 500, but the topics that I have given you as homework, that is the illustrations that you are supposed to read. Paragraph number 1.10 with respect to significant matter, and the homework is what? Definition, the meaning of term sufficient and appropriate. Hana? So before coming for the next session, please do all this homework and go through the module till where we have done in entirety. So we have done till page number 3.11, 3.11. Definition we have done, and information what is included. Till objective, that is paragraph number 2.3 we have done. So I want all of you to read the module in entirety before coming for the next session. And before ending this session, I want all of you to please reply as to whether you have understood the session for today or not, whether essay 230 is clear. And student, if you go through the module today itself or maximum by tomorrow, I assure you that your learning will also be done. Learning after understanding. Do not cram. But if you just go through the module, you will be able to understand, remember all our examples, and you will be able to learn also. ठीक है? ठीक है? So thank you for being patient listener, and thank you for making this session interactive. And hoping that in the next session you will be coming after doing the homework and going through the module, right? So thank you and good night.